Practice stillness, practice stillness. Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Let's dive right into this.
Let's dive right in. Right now is some people are saying it's turbulent times. I don't know if you guys have been hearing that, but I've heard that thrown around a little bit. The times are a little bit...
I feel a little bit of turbulence, I think.
Yeah, things are a little bit shaky, and at least here in Ottawa, Ontario, we're back in a extensive lockdown, and things just keep getting shaken up a little bit.
The strictest measures in all of North America, they tell me.
Yeah, it's pretty insane that we're going back into the lockdown, but anyway, we're doing it, and the thing is, maybe these times are especially turbulent, but I think that no matter what period of your life, there's always going to be a little bit of turbulence. If there's not, you're fortunate, right? And I kind of was wondering, do you think there's things you can do to prepare for the turbulence, or just deal with it better? Like there's practices you can do and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely turbulence, and I don't think it's like necessarily the right idea to avoid the turbulence. You know the old quote that's like, a ship is safest when it's docked up, but that's not what ships were built for.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But
yeah, you can't just
so it's like, if you're going out on the seas or flying in the airplane or whatever you're doing, the turbulence is guaranteed to happen, essentially. So it's like you almost have to learn how to deal with it. It's essential to learn.
Yeah, even if it's not a COVID lockdown, there's always going to be some sort of source of turbulence, whether it's like a relationship problem, maybe just some stress at work, or even if everything external is going fine, a lot of the time we create some internal turbulence, just internal chaos going on in our own mind. And it's relatively rare that we have that stillness, those calm periods. And I think when you do have those, you want to be pretty fortunate. Like, hey, there's nothing really going wrong right now, and things are pretty good, and appreciate that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a shame. It's almost like it's unfortunate. Sometimes you only appreciate how calm things were once things get more turbulent. Like something bad will happen today, and then you'll be like, man, what I would give to just be back yesterday with my... But yesterday you didn't actually realize that you were in such a good situation.
Yeah, it's hard to know. And yeah, like the thing that I'm really interested in is it possible to make the external turbulent times actually not that chaotic for you internally? Like, you just get better at dealing with the chaos in a sense, like, right. Because at the end of the day, really, yes, there can be all this madness going on around you, but you only experience it internally, right? So there's like a saying that I like of like sleeping in the storm. So like, if you're always sleeping in the storm's no problem. Like, it's no problem for you, essentially. So like, if you're always like, you almost condition yourself to be dealing with a little bit of stress,
right? Comfortable with being uncomfortable, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that quote you said to me once about the problem doesn't get easier, you just get stronger. And I liked that kind of taking the power back, that I think I almost felt or helpless sometimes in times of adversity, where I thought, oh, this just is awful. And then kind of switching that perspective, and you go, I do have some control here. I always have some control. And what can I do to make myself stronger? Because the external factors, or the outer problem, is not something in my control. But I always have something that I can improve internally.
Yeah. So do you guys think that is for sure the case, that you can practice being more calm in what would generally be considered a stressful situation? Like, it's not like, oh, you're always going to be a high stress individual who kind of is freaking out when things happen and you lose your cool, or that you can eventually kind of train yourself to be a little bit more relaxed when the pressure's on.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I
100%.
definitely think it's a training thing that can be learned for sure and developed.
Yeah, and have you guys tried developing it? And if so, like what kind of practices do you put in place?
Yeah, only kind of recently. I mean, in the past, like, kind of year, basically, I started, based on your recommendation, Ollie, of, like, starting to meditate. And I find that, for me, has helped so much. Just
Yeah.
in terms of, like, managing stress and anxiety and just self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one is massive. That's probably like the number one tool
Yeah, same with
that you
for
can
me.
implement.
And then taking it a step further and self-reflection or unpacking my thoughts and feelings a little bit more deeper than I ever had before, I find really helpful. And also understanding, well, through both of those things, I've gained self-awareness and better understanding of myself, and therefore better understanding of what works to counteract when I'm stressed and upset. So if I feel like the work week is really stressful, I know to throw in some times where I am doing something I enjoy or trying to counteract that stress, where I limit, like, okay, I'm not going to take on extra things right now. I know that I'm reaching my capacity, and I just have a better understanding of what kind of triggers me to feel stressed or upset. And through more knowledge of myself, I feel like inevitably I have a better understanding of what works for me.
Yeah, I think that is an important thing of literally just organizing your schedule in certain ways, or organizing your day in a certain way that it's going to allow you to have some periods where there's not much going on and you can kind of just decompress and relax. And that's one thing that I really like is like the idea of limiting your inputs, especially in times like these where there's so many potential things that you can be absorbing, like entertainment wise. There's so many social media apps, there's so much going on TV, there's all these things. And you can't really be the most productive and even the most at peace if you're absorbing all of these things.
And
so
the interesting thing about limiting your inputs is I feel like you can't, like, you have to, like, actively be trying to do that. Because if you're, like, passively just chilling, like, there's so many people trying to grab your attention with these commercials, and you pick up your phone and it's like ding 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 ding, and it's just like can make you a little bit crazy. So it's like I feel like you have to put effort into, like, shutting some of these things out of your life.
Yeah, you definitely do. There's so many that's trying to grab you, and I think the problem is we are so pulled toward it. And I'll ask you guys why you think that. I'm trying to think about why it is myself. Like, because people, like, it's always like people call it like a distraction, or it's in a bit of like an avoidance technique sometimes, to be picking up their phone and watching videos when they're feeling stressed. And yeah, I guess that's really it. Is people are. It's very uncomfortable to sit with negative feelings, so you end up going towards all these distractions, and next thing you know, you could be watching it all day long.
Yeah, it's definitely like I've had, like, friends who, like, have been, like, told me how conscious they are of, like, once they start feeling, like, really anxious, they'll pull out their phone on Instagram, and it's almost like it, like, subdues the anxiety for some reason. So it's like almost like temporary little distraction, which just, like, gets your mind off something that is bothering you, but it's almost like obviously a really temporary fix, right?
Yeah, I find it really interesting that people struggle so much, and me included, just to sit there with no distractions. Like, it's actually a bit of sometimes it can be like a painful, uncomfortable experience to just sit down, have no phone, nothing, and just be with your own mind. And that to me is a really, like, interesting, strange thing, that you just don't feel okay unless there's some other thing going on. Like, just your mind is so Like needy in a sense for some sort of action or entertainment, that it can't just be satisfied with just pure stillness, nothing going on. But I think you can work towards that, where you get more comfortable with nothing.
It's crazy when you realize like how, or like I would realize how much of my life I would go through without like just sitting and doing nothing. Like before kind of like starting to try and meditate and stuff, like I don't even know how long. Like I feel like I was going my whole life just from like screen to screen, activity to activity, and never really just chilling. Like even when I'm going to sleep, I would like look at my phone, and basically up until the minute I fall asleep. Yeah, you wake up, look at your phone again, and it's just like go.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. Just always in the phone. The phone's a big one for sure. I try to intentionally, like when I'm eating these days, I'll like throw my phone on the other side of the room or something. Just like, let's see if I can just eat, and I'll just think about things. Like I don't necessarily need to be like watching all these entertaining videos.
And like you were saying, like before, it's like once you start doing that, and you're so used to being on your phone or seeing other people be on your phone, it almost looks bizarre, like, or it feels bizarre when you don't have your phone. Like have you ever, like the other day I went into like a lineup at the grocery store, and I was like, I'm not gonna pull out my phone, I'm just gonna wait in line. And like I felt like weird. I was like, what am I doing though? I'm just standing here. Like
it is crazy that now you are the weird one for not doing that, or at least I don't know if people will really think that, but you, I guess, feel so like out of place, because generally
I feel like I
have this thing to like occupy you.
It's like the idle hands feeling. I'm just like, what do I do with my hands? Like they're just hanging out here.
And I was telling you guys another time about how sometimes at work I'll just be eating my food and not be on my phone, or not be like watching anything on my computer. And on several occasions, people have come by and be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just eating. And they're like, nothing else? Like, you're not going to watch the news? Or I'm like,
now
no,
I'm
just thinking.
No headphones in?
That's what. And I feel, you almost feel weird, because it's not quite enough to fully occupy your mind, like the eating. Because in between bites, you're like, oh, like, what are we doing now? You know what I mean? So like, that's why I think people, they want to have like something going on all the time. But
go ahead, Sammy.
Like along those lines, I was just gonna say, like I started sometimes, like I realize you don't always need radio on when you're driving. And I just started to really like that sometimes. Like you just because for some, it's one of those things, for some reason you're like, I need all this, like either a song or a podcast or like some sort of chaos going on. But then I just turn everything off completely, and just like you're just thinking while you drive. It's just an interesting
that's so
feeling,
that sounds kind of crazy. I was thinking about stillness and the idea of stillness, and even just hearing both of you speak about like driving, listening to music, eating, and watching the news, or doing something on your phone. We seem to be moving in a direction of like society of multitasking, and that for a long time now, busyness is almost seen as a good thing. Like if you're working 80 hours a week, you're like applauded, and it's like, I only got 3 hours of sleep, and it's like, wow, like look at you, really like like thriving and working hard, and your work ethic, and you're going above. You're hustling. And that there's even, people sometimes say like, if you're standing still, you're moving backwards, or just keep moving, progress. And I actually think what is great about this topic today is the idea that progress requires stillness and pauses and not moving all the time.
And you know what's interesting about that is I do feel like that's like the general consensus of this Western population, where it's like you got to go. But the interesting thing is, if you asked like a lot of like really high achieving successful people, I feel like they would almost tell you the opposite. Because
you can't like perform at your highest level without taking those times to rest, to reflect, to like contemplate, and you're just not likely to be making your best decisions if you're just constantly going all the time.
So I think this concept is really important in a time in our lives where people are commended for working overtime and not taking breaks and pushing themselves, and just about the progress and about the
Not
obtaining
sleeping.
goals and the not and being sleep deprived, and I don't think that is a long-term positive message.
Yeah, and the thing we're talking about, the stillness here is the reason why it is beneficial to try to like cultivate these times in your life is because in general I feel like it'll clear up your mind, it'll give you more happiness, more peace, and maybe counterintuitively it will actually make you more productive in the long run. I mean, like you need to take rests, and you need to limit your inputs, so that the things that you are doing, you're performing at a high level, because you have taken those times to reflect, times to reassess, and times to create like a new plan, and you're not just constantly go, don't think, just keep moving. Not only is it bad for your happiness to be doing like that, but actually it's probably worse off for your productivity too.
Yeah, I was thinking about how you hear people say, oh, like we go up to the cottage or small towns, it's a slower pace of life and it's simpler. And I feel like in a way with the lockdown, I personally experienced a slower pace of life. And now I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know what to do with myself because like I can't go anywhere and there's not much to do. But then I'm thinking this is kind of the opportunity I was looking for of having a slower pace of life. And am I taking advantage of the idea that this is a time for more self-reflection and more time to pause and get to know myself better, as maybe silly as that sounds.
Yeah, the self-reflection thing is absolutely key, I think. Like if you're just constantly going and just always like working on a specific task, and you never take the time to like take a step back and reflect on what am I actually doing, why do I actually want to do this, am I doing it the best way I can? And I think that's part of the reason why stillness, it kind of goes along with productivity, is that if you do take a step back and you take those moments to reflect, what is the current path I'm going on? Is there maybe I should steer this over a little bit, and how should I adjust? If you're not taking those moments, you might go down a bad path. That's pretty much it, and like you'll exhaust yourself.
Looking at the big picture, right? It's like you were just saying, Kailey, and I feel like the COVID lockdowns kind of like force people to do that a little bit. Like I feel like so many people, it's easy to just get stuck when in your busy life, go, and you're not even thinking about like what you just said, Ollie, like the kind of big picture. But then when something like Corona forces you to kind of slow down, and then you almost get a chance to rethink everything.
Yeah. So in that sense, and I've heard a lot of people talk about that, of like how COVID has been good for that, just a little bit more like self-reflection and figuring out like, who do I want to be, what do I want to do, like what am I doing with your life, because it's hard, you don't necessarily always get those chances to do that when you're in the busyness of life. So COVID has provided us with a bit of a step out of that, and you can kind of think about things a little bit more. And I was just thinking, like, let's say someone's listening to this and they want to try to implement some more, they want some more stillness in their life, they want a little bit more peace and calm and all that good stuff. What are some practices or activities you think they could do?
Oh boy, or lack of activities.
Yeah. I really think that the foundation of stillness, well, okay, there's a lot to it. I think that meditation is a huge component. If you can even just sit and focus on your breathing for a minute a day. I also think knowing yourself and the self-reflection piece is huge, because as you discover more about yourself, I think you'll find it easier to find stillness in your life. And so I would depending on what method works for you, whether it is journal writing or just reflecting on things in your life, you know, in your head, I do think asking yourself some tough questions like, am I satisfied in life right now? What brings me joy? The age-old question of where do I see myself in 5 years, but not in a sense of like, I need to have a job and I need to do this, but rather like meaningful. What would be meaningful to you? What do you want to continue fostering certain relationships? Are you wanting to, more on a more personal level?
Yeah, Kailey, you mentioned the journaling, which I think is one of the activities that was one of the activities I was going to bring up, because I think that one's really key, especially because sometimes you can be trying to reflect and trying to contemplate some things, and it can be difficult when it's all just going on in your head. But then when you actually put the pen to the paper, it's easier to connect dots. Like maybe you start writing, and then as you're writing things down, that kind of connects a dot to something else, and it's also just better for organization, because like you'll have all these thoughts flying around in your head, but when you put it on paper, you put a little bit of a structure to it. So the chaoticness of your own mind and that can be filtered and kind of understood a lot better when you put it down on paper.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that too. It like just brings the clarity to the thoughts, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I'll think that I know how I'm feeling, but then it's like once you start journaling and like actually like it's forcing you to connect all those dots together, it just brings like, I realized that what I had in my head was like a vague kind of cloud of emotion, to describe it in a way.
Yeah.
And then once you start writing it, it becomes so much more clear, and then you can like clearly see like, oh, that event made me feel like this for this reason.
It forces you to get a little bit more specific too, because when things are just flying around in your head, you can kind of jump over certain things, but when you have to write it down, you actually have to write in a way that makes sensible sentences that like you can't just skip over things. So it has to be clearly written, and then that really helps you to have a better understanding.
And then you can reference the emotion wheel.
Yeah, and like just to be more clear, I guess, like that's the kind of journaling that I do, is like I'll basically almost like try and dissect what I felt that day, almost like I'm like my own therapist or something. Yeah. And I'll be like, I was feeling this emotion, why was that? And like kind of just like basically get more clarity.
Did you feel benefits from that right away, or is that something that's taking time?
Yeah, no, I would feel the benefits like immediately after I wrote things down. Right. Because like I feel like it's easy to just walk around feeling something, you're feeling angry or sad or something, and then once you put it like clearly in writing, it's just like it almost like disappears sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of the biggest, like some notable figures in history have done that. And one of the more like recent ones that I found out about was Matthew McConaughey was apparently always a big journal guy. Like I think he'd be writing like every day. And the book that he recently wrote was a lot of, he said he filtered through all of his notes that he previously had written.
Cool.
And kind of brought them to the surface for the book. So yeah, it's definitely something that I would try to implement, and I'm trying to do more. Another thing is just, I find really helpful for cultivating the stillness is just sitting in nature. Like like that's another activity, is just like you just sit there and kind of I find especially if there's like animals running around, it's especially like relaxing. I'm not sure exactly why, but it's like, yeah, it's almost like a when you see nature just happening, I feel like it allows you to like step back a little bit and not be so self-concerned in a sense. Like you see like the world is like a lot bigger than just you. Right. And like you watch these animals and they're just running around. They all have their own thing. They're all doing their own business, and everybody's just kind of
Are you talking about wild animals?
Yeah, like
birds and stuff.
Birds and squirrels and whatever it is. Yeah. Really. Like you just like sit back and you see it all happening, and it makes you, it just, I feel like takes a little bit of maybe your own self-importance and drops that a little bit, and you see that the world is bigger than just you.
The world is just beautiful.
Yeah.
That's true. It's grounding, eh? To
Mm-hmm.
to see different species
No, yeah,
living.
I agree. It's really nice.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
running in the woods for me is big, or walking, like, because running I tend to use music, so I feel like that's not quite fully embracing stillness, but walking and just like no music, nothing, and you're just walking in the woods, that I find really good for kind of clearing my perspective.
Yeah, walking is definitely good.
For sure. Can we touch again on meditation a little bit?
Yeah.
Just in the terms that, like, because I know when I, like, first, or you suggested or someone suggested meditation to me, like, I didn't really understand what that was. Like, in my head, I just thought, I'm like, this is, like, what some, like, monks do, this kind of thing.
Right.
But, like, I think meditation is almost like an umbrella term for, like, it can be a lot of different things.
Yeah, it can mean different things for different people. I think in the truest form, it's a very simple but practiced technique.
Yeah, like the way that I see it as very beneficial is it's like a self-reflection and like analysis tool, so that you are better at being aware of what's going on. Like why, like you might notice a certain emotion pop up within you, and without practicing meditation, that emotion maybe would have just slipped by your consciousness. You might not have been aware of it.
Right.
But, and so then once you are aware of it, you can start to think like, why am I feeling like that? Do I necessarily need to feel like that? Like, let's say somebody called you a mean name, or like they like roasted you for your outfit or something like that.
Yeah.
And you start to get like riled up. In that moment, if you're practicing mindfulness meditation, you might catch yourself, I'm about to get riled up. Maybe I'm about to, like, if you weren't going to catch yourself there, you could have said something back and started a big fight, and maybe the relationships could have gotten ruined. But since you caught it, you'd have the ability to be like, oh, you know what, like I'm feeling too personally attacked about my outfit. Like who cares? I have the ability to let this go and go towards just like remain calm and not actually get riled up. You realize that you don't need to always be stressed out and getting riled up. It's actually possible to just be like, okay, I see what's going on. I see what that emotion is, and I see why I'm feeling like that. And let's actually choose the alternative and just remain calm, and you'll probably have better outcomes because
exactly. I love that like result of meditation. It's kind of like taking more responsibility on yourself in a way, because like the situations like that where, let's say you're driving or something, you're getting road rage and you're like, all these friggin' people, like, and it's easy to just still blame other people on what's happening to you, especially if you're not realizing that you're even getting angry, and you're like, no, I'm late for work, like this guy cut me off or whatever. But it's like that, like all casting all this blame and whatnot is like not gonna be beneficial to you whatsoever. It's like what is beneficial to you is like kind of having more self-awareness and kind of discovering what you're feeling.
Part of the benefit of meditation for me, like, it's you're thinking about your breathing and focusing on your breath as you meditate, and then I feel like once I'm not meditating, I feel more in tune with my breathing, and I'm able to catch myself when I find that I'm taking shorter breaths and my body is maybe tensing up because I'm in a stressful situation, because I have that practice of noticing my breath and where do I feel it. And so when I feel myself getting stressed out, I feel like physically I'm able to catch it because I go, oh, whoa, I'm tense, I'm sweating a little bit, my breathing is short, I have a shorter breath, and then I can kind of consciously come into that and say, okay, what am I feeling? What's going on with my emotion?
Right.
And how can I refrain from being reactive right now?
And how's the progress been for you? Because I'm thinking about, at least for myself, how at the beginning we were saying that it is possible to kind of work on this and train yourself to be able to remain calm and more relaxed under pressure situations, and just in general be a little bit more clear-headed than you once were. And if I'm to think about that progress in myself, I see it as extremely gradual. Like if I reflect back on like 6 months ago, I don't know if I made any gains or any progress really. But like if I reflect back on a few years ago, I'm like, yes, for sure I have.
Right.
So you can see that there is progress, but I
Yeah.
think it's important to note that this progress can take a long time, and it's like it will definitely come in waves, because
Yes.
I'll have days where I'm like, oh, I'm getting like pretty good at this, like
Yeah.
that thing.
Yeah.
It didn't shake me up, I stayed pretty calm, but then like the next day you're like, you lose your mind and you're like, oh my god, I thought I was like supposed to be getting better
I
at
also
this.
find with the people that I spend the most time with, and who maybe are the people that you almost feel like you're not maybe putting your best foot forward because they're your family or whatever, and you're like, whatever. That is the hardest part of the practice for me. Is like people like you guys, where I'm like, oh, you've known me my whole life, I can just tell you that I don't
You
like
just go
that,
haywire
or just
and-
go haywire.
yeah.
And then and that's kind of the hardest part for me, is
Yeah,
practicing
totally.
that.
That's why they say that you treat the ones you love the worst,
yeah.
for whatever reason that is.
I think it's
But,
because
yeah.
it's like the people that you know the best.
You're
It's
comfortable. You let your guard down.
you let your
can
guard
be
down
angry and act.
for sure. And
Yeah.
and they say that like with kids, if kids are acting out at home but not in public, like don't see it as a terrible thing, because the kids feel the most themselves, that they can be like vulnerable and maybe act out a little bit at home, because that's like a safe haven for them.
Right.
Whereas in public, they're a little bit more on guard. So it's not.
It's exactly. It's even like you go to work and you're like kind of stressed out. Your boss is yelling at you, but you're putting on a good face.
Right.
And then you come home to your partner, and then you're just like
you yell back
start
at them.
yelling back
Yeah.
at them,
Right.
getting arguments and stuff. Which
I think of
Yeah.
the metaphor of, it's like your closest, the people closest to you are like like under the microscope in a petri dish, where you see every part of them as an organism, whereas like you don't see that of strangers or acquaintances you interact with. So
Right.
you just, all of their flaws and all the differences between the two of you are right there on display, because you just know them. And so it's easy to just like remove the good and see the bad, or just to be quick to kind of react in
Yeah.
a situation, because
Right.
you just
that's,
you know it
that's
all, you
true.
see it all.
That's why you always like think it's a great idea to move in with this roommate, and then after you live with them
Yeah.
for a bit, you're like, I can't stand this person.
Yeah.
But
But anyway, it's like you were, to go back to the earlier point, Ollie, I definitely feel like, yeah, it's definitely not like a light switch of like you start practicing these things and then you're better. Like I've definitely felt it like waves for sure, and sometimes it feels like zero progress, and I'm like, I don't know, why am I even meditating and doing this stuff? But then I
Yeah.
think if you zoom out on the big graph, if it was like plotted like a graph, I definitely think it's going up slowly over time, which is nice. So just remember to keep going.
Yeah, and the patience required to like see the progress is another challenge in itself, that requires you to stay like calm and relaxed, because that's one thing that I feel like can shake people up sometimes. And I see that in myself, where like you do have a goal, like let's say you want to have more stillness or whatever it is, you want like this podcast to do well, or like really whatever it is, and you, as the results are not necessarily coming, you start to lose your stillness. Like you start to lose the clear mind, and you're like, oh my, like where are the result, this isn't working, like why isn't this happening? And so in that sense, I feel like it's very crucial to kind of remain calm for long-term goals, because they won't really come. And I really like the idea of trying to detach your ego from the outcome, so that you're not so focused on the results. So if the results don't come, or they don't like win, lose or draw, you're still just gonna keep moving forward, and so that you're not totally shaken up when the result that you wanted didn't happen. And somebody that I saw who was like really, really good at that was actually Ben Askren, the guy that was fighting last night on Triller against Jake Paul. He's like phenomenal at that, and I heard him talk about that in a podcast about trying to detach your ego from the outcome. And many people might not know him, but to give an example of one of the things that happened to him, he was in like a pretty high stakes UFC fight, got knocked out in like 5-6 seconds, and the way he talks about it is that a couple days after that event, which was one of the biggest nights of his life, and he lost in devastating fashion, the image of him getting knocked out was put off, like broadcasted all over the place. So a lot of people would be like, oh, that's really embarrassing, and that sucks. That's going to be a hard thing to swallow. But he says 2 days later, he was the same guy. He's like the way he looks at it is nothing different was really going to happen. Like I went in there, I tried my best, and the outcome that I wanted didn't happen, but you just keep moving on. Like he didn't have his ego attached to the outcome at all. It was like we just keep going.
Yeah.
And he got knocked out last night as well.
That's
against
easier
Jake
said
Paul.
than done, for sure.
Very hard.
But it was. I saw the.
But you see him, and
I saw he was smiling when he was walking out of the ring yesterday.
yeah. So it's like he's got it down really well. Where he's like, you can tell he's a very calm, like kind of stoic person. Where whatever happens, he's not too rattled, because at the end of the day, he knew that he put in his best shot, and if it didn't work out, it still was a success because he put in his best shot.
Right.
And for me, I really, really like that idea of just like, it doesn't matter if you win or lose if you honestly know that you tried your best, because if you lose and you put in your best effort, that still should be taken out as a success.
For sure.
And then in that sense, as long as you're being honest with yourself and always putting in your best effort, you can't really ever lose. You know what I mean? Like you're always just doing the best that you can with your previous experiences and your current knowledge. And so in that sense, it's just you don't really have any failures, even if on paper you failed. On
a smaller, like more, because I don't think we're all like doing big fights or anything like that, but on a smaller scale, I like to sometimes ask myself at the end of the day, like, am I proud of my actions? Am I proud of the way that I handled myself? And I think taking the time to acknowledge when you are proud of yourself, or when you feel that you've overcome something, whether it is a 5-minute thing where someone says something to you, and instead of reacting, you take a moment to calm down. I think what makes these more permanent and more consistent is taking a moment to really acknowledge that you've done that correctly, like that you didn't react, or that in a day you were proud of your actions, and it makes it more ingrained in your mind. For sure.
That reminds me of this quote. I think you know it, Ollie, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like, self-esteem is the relationship you have with yourself. Or something like that. Yeah, I know.
I've heard that one too, but I have like just as not accurate memory of it either. So let's just say that was right.
But it's like, I find that, Kailey, what you're saying is kind of interesting, because I feel like it is, if you can appreciate the things that you're doing, and if like you yourself like think like morally what you're doing throughout the day, you can be proud of, then I feel like it's ultimately going to boost your self-esteem and kind of help you. Whereas if you're just like treating other people terribly and stuff, I feel like you're going to get kind of down on yourself eventually.
Yeah, that was a key thing that was brought up in the book Stillness Is the Key, is that you want to try to live like a virtuous life, because like for its own sake, because if you're going around lying and cheating and like betraying everybody, it's actually going to be chaotic for you. And if you don't have any standards set in place for what is right action, then there's nothing really to live up to. But if you have this guideline that you always follow these kind of set of values, and you never stray off that path, no matter what happens, if you're always just following those values, in your book, you're doing the right thing. And if you have a value, it's almost like a code book that will keep you on track. So when something kind of crazy happens in your life, you at least have this like code book essentially to turn on, to turn to see like what is the right thing to do here. But if somebody has no values and they have no they'll have no guidance essentially. So that'll be a lot more chaotic, because you don't know what to do, what's right, what's wrong. But if you have a clear cut rules where it's like, no, that's right to do, that's wrong to do. So when something problematic pops up in your life, you're gonna be more calm and you're gonna be more still, because like, no, I know what the right thing to do is, and I'm gonna do that thing.
Kind of a textbook of sorts. I think that's exactly how to bring it back like full circle to journaling. That is a great way to discover what your values are and what's important to you. You can even Google a list of values if you're looking for a place to start, and kind of scan through them and go through each one and say like where would I rank this on the scale of importance, and then working through that. I would recommend that as a tool. For
sure. Yeah, imagine you were like looking at somebody else and watching them lie and cheat and stuff, and then you're like, man, this guy sucks. And I feel like it's that same concept, but for self-esteem and for yourself, except you know exactly what you're thinking and doing, so you don't hide anything. And then if you don't have a good value system and you're like, you know, not living your life in a great way, like you're not going to hide it from yourself, and eventually it's going to be very bad for you.
Yeah, and especially with the lying one, if you're lying to a bunch of people, you essentially need to keep track of all these parallel stories, and that just adds more chaos in your mind, and that decreases the stillness for you, for sure, because you have to like think, what did I tell that person, and then I told someone else that other different thing, so now I got to keep track of all these stories. And it's just like, just don't lie, and like just try to do the right things. Obviously it can be easier said than done, but like that will actually produce more peace in your mind, because you don't need to be keeping track of all these crazy things that you said, and none of them match each other. It's just simple. You do the things that align with your values, and it creates a lot more peace for you and a lot more clear-headedness, I think. Yeah,
I would, and I know we've mentioned a few very good options for creating stillness. If this was me listening to the podcast, I would like maybe choose 2 or 3 to start with, and within a week, like start out small, whether it is journaling one day, an actual practice meditation, a walk in the woods, or sitting in nature. But don't feel like, and I think it's best, and as we talked about in the Habit podcast, not to implement 7 things all at once. So if you're beginning with stillness, or you're beginning your stillness journey, start simple, or something like not using your phone right when you get up, or not eating with your phone, or something that is tangible, so you don't get overwhelmed, because then that's counterintuitive.
Interestingly enough, sometimes it actually can, it's not even that difficult to do a bunch of them at once, because sometimes it's almost like a domino effect. And I see that a lot in my life, where like if I am doing one certain habit, like I am working out, it almost just like leads into other good ones as well. So like maybe you finish the journaling, you're like, oh, I feel good about I did that, and now I'm gonna go do this other, you're feeling kind of relaxed, you're like, oh, I'll do some meditation for a little bit, and then you're like, oh, maybe I'll go for a walk. Like it's just sometimes it can actually lead into the next thing.
After working out, I never feel like eating McDonald's or anything like that. You know? You're like, I got to keep this ball rolling. I'm gonna eat some healthy food.
Wait, what did you say you have to keep rolling?
The ball.
Oh.
Yeah, that one I see in myself for sure, where like if I am working out, I will feel like I should be eating something good afterwards. Yeah. But when I stop working out, I just eat like garbage. It happens every time. Like every time I take a break from working out, I just like, I'm like, like I don't need to eat well. I wasn't even working out. So
What
like,
do you
there's
think
no point.
about
I don't need the fuel.
a part of maintaining or continuing my stillness journey is accountability. So I am competitive. So if I hear that like you were just meditating, Ollie, and like Sammy, you were like, I went for a run.
Yeah, I'm gonna meditate harder than
Oh
you.
yeah, like then I feel so.
Yeah.
I don't know. That could actually be a good thing. Is maybe do like start with a friend or something, or
Oh, for sure, yeah.
or keep track in some way, and then have some type of reward. Like
What's the,
if you're trying to create the habit.
Rising tide lifts all ships. That's my second ship metaphor for
Okay.
this
Right,
podcast.
right, yeah.
But
Drop us a ship emoji if you're
definitely
down with the.
like it's hard to
metaphors.
do, or for me it was hard to get started by myself, and then I saw you guys doing it, and we made like a little spreadsheet where we could see what each other was doing.
Yeah.
And then once I saw you guys were like exercising and meditating every day, I was like, man, I'm gonna do
for
this too.
creating good habits. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
definitely helps, and the competitive bone in my body definitely comes out when you see other people doing things. Like I'll even think about that sometimes when I'm running, where I'm like, oh, I know like one of you like ran further than this or whatever, so like I'll push myself that extra mile.
Yeah.
And it can be fun to have that, but then sometimes it seems like you're taking it overboard. Where
Yeah. Are you losing the reason why you're doing it? I think like within within limits, it's good to be put like feel some pressure or motivation more so
Yeah.
to do something.
Another idea that I really like is the idea of treating your ability to handle stress almost like in the same way you would developing your like cardio with running,
Mm-hmm.
where it almost is just an endurance skill that you can gradually increase your limit of what you can handle,
Yeah.
so that you can remain still longer under more intense stresses or just more prolonged stresses,
Yeah.
because you've had more experience dealing with it. And I think that's for sure true. At least I like when I reflect on my life, I think that's definitely the case. I used to like finish up with work like a few years ago, and I come home and be like, oh, I'm done. I can't do anything else the rest of the day. Like I'm totally exhausted. But now these days I feel like I can finish work and continue doing some other things, and I see it like very parallel to like developing your cardio and working out.
Is it like I actually, having faced some adversity in recent times, I found myself having like an outer body experience where I was looking at myself going like, let's go, like can we handle this, like this stress,
Yeah,
like
you look
this
at it
is
as
the
a challenge.
yeah
almost.
and like it yeah, and I feel like I have never had that perspective before in my life, where I've always like shied away from any stress and like let's get rid of this as quick as possible, and this is awful, and like I don't like this. But I am really happy with the idea that at times in my life in extreme stress, I've been able to think, okay, but let's take this and make the most of what we have. And this is, I personally am not a big fan of the saying everything happens for a reason. I feel more like give yourself that power, and you are the one creating, a better opportunity out of some adversity, and you're the one, having the perspective. You're the one making something positive or having a more positive thought process. So I don't really think that everything happens for a reason is a great way to look at it, but rather you are stronger, you are better, and you've made the most of something, and therefore it was all in your control.
Right. So yeah, like we were said at the very beginning, the turbulence comes, and then you figure out like it's in your responsibility essentially to learn how to deal with it.
Yeah,
you get better at dealing with the turbulence and pushing your mind past the areas where you used to crack. I used to crack at this line on, it's like, I like the analogy of the race always, where like maybe at like 5K you used to crack and it's like I'm done. But and then you could relate that to like certain level of stress or certain level of work, even where like maybe you used to only be able to study or read for like 30 minutes and now you can go an hour, And I think that's something that you can like push yourself to a certain extent, at least, where you can do more than you used to be able to do, because each activity isn't riling you up or stressing you out quite as much. Like, you're better at remaining calm so that you're more efficient with each task.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something I don't think we talked about yet, is like the kind of like how much energy you'll expend by being like stressed or anxious, and how much like energy you can conserve by learning how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Like some days when I have a lot of projects due or something, like I'll just be sitting at a desk, but I'll become like exhausted. And then, but it's like, as I've definitely, if I look at like a long timeline, definitely got much better at dealing with like a lot of things at once.
Yeah, I think that's one of the worst parts of anxiety for me, is that it just really can drain your energy. And if I reflect back like years ago, I would be so much more tired all the time, and it was because of that. There was just a lot more anxiety and chaos going on in my mind, so that I was just always drained, even though physically there might not be that much happening. And like physically I might not have been doing that much work, but I was just exhausted. And I find that really interesting, and definitely a motivating force to try to reduce your anxieties and cultivate a calmer mind, because you'll just have more energy to do more things. And I feel like that's massive. I was even hearing on a podcast, one of the best UFC fighters of all time, George St. Pierre, he was talking about how he finds himself more exhausted after a media day than he does after like a really hard training session.
Right.
Just because he's not used to doing those media days and talking to the public, and it just really drains him. Like, it's probably an anxiety provoking thing. Whereas he could do like 2-3 hours of hard training in the gym and leave that and feel pretty good, just because that's what he does all day. Like, he's been doing that for years. That's his thing that he's comfortable doing with. But the actual talking to the media, that really drains him. And definitely. The thing is, he was telling this to Joe Rogan, which is a guy who's talking like all day long. Right. And he's like, I don't know how you do it, Joe. Like, you sometimes you'll do 2 podcasts in a day. Yeah. And Joe's like, oh, I just got used to it. And that really is what it is. It's like, you push yourself slowly but surely. And I feel like a consistency aspect is very, very key there too. Just like it would be for running. If you're not running consistently, you're going to lose the progress. So if you're not consistently doing those media days like it would be for him, you might not actually continually get better. If you do it once a month, by the time the next month comes around, you might be pretty much back at square one. Yeah. So it's like a consistency of pushing your mind towards the thing. You're right. And I think that's a great point. Of all the things we've talked about that were practical things we use to be more still, are all things that require consistency. Like, not one of those things is something you do every now and again and then expect to have results. Like, you can't just journal once every 2 months and go, oh, it didn't work.
The awareness is like a part of it too. Like being aware of like being in these stressful situations, and almost looking at it like it is like a training ground and a practice session. Yeah, it's definitely a perspective switch that really helps to keep you going, because if you're looking at it like a training ground, that in a training ground, a success is to push further. And a training ground is like, you're expecting it to be uncomfortable. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's no surprise that this is a little bit uncomfortable, because it's training, mistakes. Just like you're like, okay, let's see how much further we can go and make mistakes. I also find that the another perspective switch of looking at the things that might be frustrating you or like slightly uncomfortable with a perspective of curiosity really helps to take away from the like negativity of it, or like the discomfort of it. Because I was outside writing the other day, and there started to be some like loud, like this dog, the neighbor dog was just barking really loud. And like
and then there's down the street like a few houses, there's some kids screaming, and like I was trying to write it, so immediately I'm like why do they, like, what is this like noise, like I can't focus, like why is all this stuff going on?
Yeah.
And you just immediately react. And I feel like that's one thing that I'm trying to get a lot better at, is like almost have a bit of a time delay on the between the thing that happens and my reaction. So there might be like a dog barking and you don't just immediately blow up, or there might be somebody says something to you that you don't like and you don't immediately just like fight back. It's like take a few seconds and think and then react. And I feel like mindfulness is very helpful with that, because you see it up, you see the fire like burning inside you or starting to develop, but you're like, wait a sec, let's I see what's going on, let me just like sit back for a little bit and think about this, and then we go. And I feel like that's huge for not starting like big drama.
For sure. And especially like situations like that where it's like environment and it's like you don't have any control over that, like necessarily, but what you do have a lot of control over is how you interpret situations and like how you're going to react to them.
When your heart rate is up at a certain point, your prefrontal cortex cannot function properly. You can't reason and think as clearly.
Is that what fight or flight mode is?
Yeah, you go into I guess so. I don't know exactly. Don't ask me too much of the science, but I just know that if your heart rate goes up too high, you can't think as clearly. So if you think about how if you're physically stressed and you feel it in your body, there's a good chance that you're not thinking as clearly as you should. In relationship therapy, it's recommended that if a couple is fighting, to actually take 20 minutes, because that's how long it will take for your body to come down from that, to separate from each other and actually not think about the issue or about your partner and do something completely different, solely of the purpose of physically getting your body back to a calm place.
That might I could see that not going well, though. It's like, listen, I know we're arguing, but I have to watch hockey for like 30 minutes right now. But no, that's probably why they say like it's dangerous to drive angry, or like, you know, things like this, because I do want, if you are stressed and high heart rate and stuff, it definitely, like, we've all experienced it, like you're not thinking clearly.
No, you're really not. And sometimes people will kind of pressure you in those argument situations to get you to respond when you are still heated. Like I've had that before, where like you're in an argument and I'll just be like sitting there. I'm thinking about what should I say, and maybe I shouldn't say anything right now. I should think about it a little bit more. But people will be like, "What are you thinking? Like, what are you thinking? Like, say it. Like, what do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you guys have had situations like that.
Yeah.
But
I've had that with you.
Yeah, but I don't know if you know what I usually say, but I'll just be like, I'm thinking. That's what I'm like. Let me think about this. Because you don't want to.
I think that's a huge part of it, though, is the communication piece. So not making someone question and guess what's going on with you. To say, hey, you said some really important things, and I appreciate you sharing. I need a few minutes to collect my thoughts and think about this. And that's great, because I feel like sometimes all you just are silent. So because like sometimes you just don't say anything, and it's like, okay, I assume you're thinking, but I think it goes a long way to communicate that. So
I should just say, I'm thinking. 1 sec.
Yeah, you say my frontal cortex needs a minute to.
I think I might have missed.
Well, it's not even like a high heart rate thing either. It's just like sometimes there's more complex problems that it's unrealistic for me to come up with my best answer in a matter of half a second.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just know that. So I know that sometimes, depending on how emotionally you're getting, it can take even like days for you to really settle down and be like, this is where we should go with that. This is the answer that makes the most sense. And that, in my mind, prevents a lot of unnecessary drama, because when you're in the heat of the battle and like, you're like, let's say you're yelling at me or whatever, and I don't just take a time to like sit and think about things, I could fire back at you and then like make fun of you, and then now you're like even more upset. I can't believe you said that, like stuff like that. And I feel like that's way less likely to happen if people are just taking a little bit more time to think before they react. Yeah, before they react.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
Yeah.
Should we give the audience the quick Five Guys story?
Yeah, I think we could. I mean, like this definitely what we were just talking about. It really leads into that example that we brought up on a couple podcasts ago about me and Kailey having a bit of a disagreement, a bit of a fight, and I actually think we did pretty well with just like not reacting and kind of just sitting there and thinking about things. Maybe there was a little bit not enough communication, but
maybe not. But I commend both of us on our practice of using our vocabulary to express our feelings. So not just being like, I'm mad at you, like to specifically be able to. I think we did a good job of communicating how we felt. Yeah, that was a dark day.
Oh, was it ever? Yeah, that was one of the darkest periods of our existence, probably.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that story next podcast.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know if we should leave it on a cliffhanger again, but
I feel like we can leave it on a cliffhanger.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, we'll talk about it next time. See you guys later. Goodbye.
Okay. Bye.